Stacy Russo. I'm a librarian and a professor at Santa Ana College in Santa Ana, California. I am also the author of We Were Going to Change the World, which is an oral history project with women from the early Southern California punk rock scene. And as I sit here now, I look a certain way, but if you were to see me in the 1980s, I would look profoundly different. I was a punk rock girl. I can definitely say that punk rock is probably the largest influence on my life in terms of not just the larger political ideas I have, but even just how I live my daily life. And I decided that I wanted to do a project where I interview other women like me who are now in their 40s, 50s, 60s, or maybe even older, and ask them about their experiences with punk rock, you know, why they were involved, how they were involved, and how it was being a woman in the scene. That's kind of often thought of as masculine. And see how it may have influenced their lives if it has, and that's how this book came to be. I was surprised that so many of the women felt like I do, really, about the punk rock scene, that they felt that very welcome there, that it was their scene. They didn't feel like an intimidation or anything like that, but it's definitely not the case 100% of the time. Human beings were involved in the scene, and issues in society are still going to be there, and there definitely was a lot of violence. I'm not trying to sugarcoat that. I saw a lot of violence. It's hard to remember how all that stuff happens now, not just because of maybe my age, but also because of partying it up back then. I'm definitely drinking a lot and having fun. So there's a lot of things I can't remember too well, but I had a lot of fun. But I do recall that I got a hold of a Dead Kennedys album in the mid-'80s, and In God We Trust is the title, and maybe 84, 85 it came out. And I heard that music, and I could see that some people might be terrified of that music. Even if you listen to it today, it sounds incredibly intense. At this moment it would. But I guess I always felt like a lot of the women in the book that I interviewed, a bit of an outsider or a misfit, you know, growing up. And that music, although at first it was pretty intense and scary, I absolutely loved it, and I found my community in the punk rock scene. Orange County was a very vibrant area for punk rock. Being close to Los Angeles is really just part of it, because there were a lot of major bands from Orange County that even people that may not know about punk rock might be familiar with some of the bands, but definitely anyone who knows punk rock would recognize these bands. Probably the most famous one you could say is like Social Distortion, you know, or the Adolescents, Agent Orange, some aspects of TSOL, you know, are from Orange County. So these are bands known all over the world, you know, big bands that came from here. I think Orange County, as everyone knows who lives in this area, is known as being more conservative, more traditional, you could say. Depends where you live, though. I mean, I wouldn't say that about, you know, where I live in Santa Ana, but definitely there are areas that are still kind of, you know, more conservative, perhaps. So I think being punk rock in Orange County, walking around punk rock in the 80s, took a lot of courage. It took a lot more courage to, let's say, where I was, and you know, walking down Yorba Linda Boulevard with a mohawk is different than walking down, you know, Sunset Boulevard with a mohawk. So people would, you know, like throw things at you maybe from cars or yell at you. The police could be terrible, I must say, in Orange County. So I think that I did experience some differences with that, even how the police were with us in comparison to if the police came up to us and we were in Los Angeles. They were kind of like, what are you guys doing? It's just like, whatever, you know. But here it was like they would even draw their guns on us and stuff. So I think it took a lot of courage, I guess you could say, to be punk rock in Orange County. I know that being in the punk rock scene is obviously not the same for everybody. People have different experiences. For some people, it may have been just more of a gathering or fun time, you know, and I can relate to that. But for me, I was really drawn into the politics of it. Issues such as, you know, women's rights and animal rights, and issues dealing with class and poverty and racism. And so the bands that spoke about all that definitely appealed to me in a major way. And all those politics and views are still part of my life now. I think also the DIY, the do-it-yourself aspect of punk rock was very appealing to me. In the 80s, I did a fanzine, which is a small self-published magazine with my friends called Anti-Establishment, and we would sell this fanzine to different stores in the area. Also, people would buy it around the world, and we would mail it to them. This is all like pre-internet stuff, and I really think about that as so empowering and amazing that we were really just teenagers, you know, around 16, and we were creating our own content and putting it out there in the world and writing these articles about, you know, feminism or animal rights, or, you know, being angry at the government and different policies and all that, even though we were so young. I still embrace all of that, even now as an educator and as a librarian when I'm doing things with students. So I think those were the main things that drew me in, besides the intensity of the music and the freedom. Also that it allowed for me as a young girl. I love being a woman, but there are a lot of, I guess you could say, stereotypes, or to be honest, a lot of things that a lot of women are into that I'm simply not into it at all. And so the scene was great because it was this space where I could dress however I want, I could look however I want. The guys were into it. They didn't, you know, put any restrictions on how I appeared or if I was feminine or not. I would also just say I went to many protests as a young punk rock girl, anti-war protests and animal rights protests, and those were important things in my life, to see that at a young age, that you could live your life as an activist, and that could be very important to the world, and it's perhaps a goal you could have, even to live your life that way, not just focused on maybe obtaining money or material things, but actually living an ethical life.